a skill I'm trying to develop. And as I was sat there, and I said, God, what can you show me? What's the church? What's for these 2 days? What do we want? And I was just drawn to the trees, because obviously the trees now are turning yellow, aren't they, from green? And it's a new season, isn't it? It's autumn. And I just had a sense of, you get that feeling, don't you? It's a new season. And I think August has come to open up that for us. So you're in for a great night. And I'm not going to say any more because your words are so much more. I can't say them for you, so I'm going to just stand over. We'll start in prayer. So we thank you, Lord, that we are connected, a global family. And our common thing is you, Lord Jesus. We worship you, we adore you, and today we want to learn from you as well. Holy Spirit, thank you for being with us. Thank you for warming our hearts to your mission and what you want in this community. Thank you for bringing August and Andreas to bring us this good news. And we just ask it in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe we'll just start with having Andres stand up. This is my friend Andres. He is 70 years old, recently retired. He doesn't speak much English, but he is a man of prayer. Everyone should have a person of prayer in their life. So I'm grateful he can travel with me. My wife is working, so he's traveling with me. So this is Andres. So please say hi to him if you haven't already. It is a joy to be with you. One of the things I enjoy the most is to come to churches that are doing their best to hold the light of the gospel in their communities, in their cities. And what I've learned from hearing and talking with Duncan is that you are doing that. So thank you. Thank you for standing for Jesus. Thank you for figuring out how to reach in your community. I'm going to start by just telling you a little bit about myself, but I would really like us to treat us this evening like a workshop. Can we do that? So feel free to jump in with questions, raise your hand, or just interrupt me. I actually like that. So I'd rather deal with too many interruptions and try to cool you down rather than on the other side. Does that make sense? And I think you have a lot to teach me also. So let's just talk and think about how we can share the gospel, how we can reach the people around us, how we can work through some of the roadblocks, because the people, we all need Jesus. We know that. We've been on both sides of the line, and we want to share him. So I'm born and raised in Iceland. I came to faith in 1995, which was 29 years ago. So you can do the math. I will be 50 next year. I know I don't look that, but that is the fact. So I just have to deal with that. I want to tell you where I come from. Today I'm at a place where I am entering into full-time ministry as a missionary in Iceland, where I will be focusing on the university campus to give those kids an opportunity to hear the gospel. And there is almost nothing of that happening in Iceland today, and I want to devote this second part of my life to changing that. But I haven't always been in that place where I enjoy sharing the gospel. And in fact, around 2010, I said a very honest prayer to God. That is a dangerous thing. So make sure you think that through before you do that. So I said to God, okay, God, if I'm very honest, I'm not that interested in sharing the gospel. That is the place I was at, being honest with God. But I didn't stop there. And I said, God, I don't want to be in this place. So I started to ask God to give me a heart for the lost. And he has been doing that. And through a miraculous series of events, which I'm not going to spend time going through now, he connected me with some evangelists. And I started to realize that there was actually more of an evangelist in me than a pastor. I was pastoring a church at the time. And now, like I said, I'm moving into focusing on evangelism work in Iceland because I love talking with atheists. I love talking with skeptics. I enjoy starting conversations with people, seeing where they're at, assessing where they're at, and maybe helping them take a little step closer to finding God. So this is where I come from. I just wanted to know, I come from a place where I really struggled with sharing the gospel. My wife, my wife's name is Kolbrún. You can probably not say that, but that's her name. We have 3 children, and when we came to faith in '95, she actually wanted everyone to know, especially our family, that we were now following Jesus. So we would be visiting a family member, and then at a certain point in the conversation, I would get this into my sides, and then I was supposed to tell them, That was, wives have their way of communicating. So, and I actually struggled with that at the time. But like I said, I'm in a different place now. But before I get into more content, I was even thinking if we can now, early on in this evening, maybe hear from a couple of you guys, either something that you have done that has worked well and has been a positive experience in reaching out to your community with the gospel, or something that you tried or seen done that definitely was not good, all right? Something that either was even unhealthy or even something that just doesn't work. So can we maybe get a couple of examples of that from anyone? Just if you want to share a story or two.
I'll start. I'm Sylvia, and I lived in Cumbria for some time. I was doing Sunday school in a church, in a Methodist church there, and the children were not coming. So we decided to finish it, and I thought, well, this is not right, Lord. I was looking forward to just sitting in church, but I thought, no, I can't do this. Anyway, I worked in a care home in Keswick, and they were having the Keswick Convention. You'll have heard of that. And I went across after work, and I went in the tent, and it just sort of hit me, and the curtains open, and this thing called Messy Church, and I thought, this is what we need to do. So we did do the Messy Church in Seascale, which was very successful, but then I became one of the regional coordinators for Cumbria, so I used to have to go and help anyway. But then we decided it was time for us to move back down here, and when I first arrived, I was asked if I would do one in the park. So we did do one in the park, and then we started now going into Moorend School to do it, but then we started it in church as well, haven't we? So that has really been successful because we're getting not just children, but families.
Great.
So that is a good.
Excellent. Great. So you're reaching out to the community. The families are actually coming into your church building.
The last one we had was in the summer holidays, and we had 50 children plus adults and everyone.
Fantastic. I was just telling Duncan and Alison that, like in Iceland, our culture is such, especially in our smaller towns, that just entering into the church building is a huge step. And many people, they want to explore God, but going into the building is too big of a step for them. Because then everyone in town will know that you're going to the crazy people, and you're marked, because you're different from everyone else. So, just that people will be able to come into church, even if they're coming for, maybe not the service, it can be a win. All right, one or more, 2 stories? Something that works or doesn't work so well?
To know what doesn't work.
Please, what doesn't work?
So I was involved in a church
Yeah. So even if people came to the building, they were not necessarily meeting Jesus or being discipled or.
Well, God was very gracious, I have to say.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is the emphasis was wrong.
Right, right. So Jesus wasn't center, he wasn't the priority. Yeah,
I can't speak for other people, but probably in my life,
Right,
that's what's
right.
going on.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
I'll save anybody else the embarrassment.
Yeah. And if there's another story that comes to mind, and even now, yeah, Scott.
It's been going back about 30 years. It was an organisation, they used to go around churches, they used to run plays called Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames. And churches would invite them to come along. They bring all the props and everything. They would sort of like decorate your church. They'd spend 1 week training. So all the people in the church would be the cast. So they'd spend 1 week training people up.
I've seen this once.
You've seen it,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the following week they would invite people. And the church we were at the time would hold about 250 people. And for, I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 nights where we ran. Every night was full, but it was one of the events where people were inviting people who would not normally go to church because it was a non-threatening type play, but it gave out, a really strong, harsh message. And I hadn't realised, one of the parts I played was a builder, and I was talking to a builder friend of mine, and when we were talking, a wall collapsed on us, and wherever, and we died. One of us went to heaven, the other one went to hell, but we talked about Jesus, and I'd said to my friend, this is how you give your life to Jesus. And it wasn't until about 6 months later, when I was walking from the car park to the church, there was 3 or 4, I would say not young girls, probably about 15, 16, 17, came and spoke to us, and they said, they just thanked us, and I said, I didn't even know who they were, and they said, when you were doing the sinner's prayer during that, we all gave our lives to Jesus at that time. And I was totally unaware, because I was just doing the play, obviously prayed about it a lot, but it was just something, a production that was put on, everybody in the church, there was a lot of prayer around it, and it was just so impactful.
Great.
And it was, like I said, a non-threatening thing that people were just going to invite people to, but the gospel was very, very strong all the way through it.
Yeah. Great. Great. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, maybe I'll just start with this. And we were actually talking about this today, Duncan and I. In Acts chapter 1, Jesus is on his way to be, ascended. And the disciples say, Lord, they actually kept asking him. This is Acts 1:6. They kept asking him. So this is a question they were apparently asking again and again and again. Lord, has the time come for you to free Israel and restore our kingdom? Okay, it's our kingdom. And then he replied, the Father alone has the authority to set those dates and times, and they are not for you to know. So Jesus is kind of saying, you're talking about our kingdom, and this is what you want to focus on, but this isn't really what you should be thinking about. This isn't really what you should have as priority. This isn't really what you should be spending time and energy asking me about again and again and again. Here is what you should be focusing on, he says. But, and there's a big but, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. I'm not going to unpack this whole thing here, but just to draw out that he uses the word witnesses. Okay. And as I'm talking here, I'm traveling from Iceland, I'm going into full-time ministry. Somebody may think, well, this is easy for you, August, because you're really focusing on this, and you're an evangelist. But I'm not, so this is not fair game, right? But Jesus uses the word to witness and to be his witnesses. So the story I always tell is if you're driving out here today and maybe you have your lovely wife next to you and you're not looking when you're taking the turn, you're looking at your wife instead of looking around. So you just swing your car in front of another car and there's an accident. Okay. Now if Duncan was witnessing that, he will see all of that. But maybe there was a dispute, so they call a specialist in how cars work, and they call the policeman, and then they have a hearing, and they talk to the policeman, and they ask questions of the specialist. Was the braking distance of the car fair? Was the road wet? Were the tires okay? All of that. And then they talk to Duncan, who witnessed the accident. Now, what are they going to ask Duncan? What did you see? Right. So, Andres was driving his car, and I saw that he wasn't looking. He was just looking at his wife, and he just turned, and that red Toyota just tried to brake, but hit him. Okay. So they will ask Duncan about what he saw and what he witnessed. They're not going to ask Duncan about all the paperwork the police person did. They're not going to ask him about braking distances that the specialist answered, right? So that's what we're all called to do, to be a witness, which means that we don't need to answer the questions that the specialist necessarily is answering. We need to answer and share naturally what our life with God is. So that may look like Stefan? No, what's your name? Stephen. So Stephen goes to work tomorrow, and they will gather at the coffee pot, and they will ask him, so Stephen, what did you do last night? Did you see the game? And what will Stephen say? What will you say? No. What did you do last night?
Played some games.
And if they ask you tomorrow, what did you do last night?
Came here.
I came to church. You came to church? Why did you go to church?
To see you speak.
Why do you go to church in general? So I'm not going to put you on the spot, but do you see what happened right there? Did you notice that? I'm his coworker, so I just ask a question. And the question, if we're willing to be normal and everyday people, we basically share in a normal everyday life what we do in our life and why we do what we do. I'm not asking him a deep theological or apologetic type of a question, right? I just asked him to be a witness. Does that make sense? So we are all called to be a witness, but only some of us are called to be an evangelist. So the greatest definition or a difference between the two that I've heard is that a witness tends to answer questions like the one I asked of Stephen. And you saw how that worked. Now an evangelist, he will tend to ask questions. Does that make sense? So we're all called to answer questions, but a few of us are evangelists, and then we ask questions. Now, if my wife was here, she would tell you, August does that all the time. He's always asking people questions. Do you believe in God? And then people say, no. Well, what are some of the main reasons you don't believe in God? And then I will ask people questions and learn how they think, learn what makes them tick, what they're interested in, and try to bring the conversation to the gospel. That's because yeah. So does that make sense? Yeah. Is that helpful? You don't need to be a specialist. Now, you will have some people that maybe are full of anger and hurt. And they just flare up if anything related to God is brought up. That happens. Okay. They're not really angry at you. There's something else going on. We pray for them, but we try not to focus on them because most of the time, it's not much we can do. But we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? And then you will maybe get some questions that are difficult and you don't have an answer to. And that's okay. I don't know how gravity works. I don't know what really is going on inside of an atom, but it still works, And if you have questions like that, try to find people, even in your group, that are good at talking about those questions and say, hey, my friend Joe, he actually has looked into this. Come over to my house on Saturday morning. I'll cook us some breakfast, and you'll meet Joe. Let's talk about this, for example. So you can kind of identify the people in your group that may have these strengths, and then you can do team. Work? All right. So hopefully that's a little helpful to relax, because I don't need to be the expert, okay? I just need to focus on Jesus, worship him, live my life with him, and then naturally share about my life as people ask me. That is to be a witness. All right? Okay. I could say a lot more about Acts chapter 1, but we're not going to do that now. Okay. Okay, before I get to the board, let me say one more thing. My favorite model of evangelism, let's do this. I'm going to ask a few people just to name a Bible verse that is your favorite Bible verse related to evangelism and sharing the gospel. Let's just hear of 2-3 people share that. So off the top of your head. A Bible verse into that. Excuse me? For so God loved the world, etc. Great. Thank you, Glenn. Anyone else?
John 14, let not your heart be troubled.
Let not your heart be troubled. John 14. What's your name?
Sid.
Sid. Thank you, Sid. One or two more? I can do all things. And how specifically do you find this speaks into evangelism and sharing the gospel?
When people who know me always ask me, why do I never seem vexed or flustered about things, things like that. And I thought, yeah, so I've got Jesus in my life. I've been through so many things anyway, nothing vexes me anymore. But I got that strength in my life.
Yeah. I'm almost going to speak more into that, but that's brilliant. Thank you. One more? All right. This is great. So here's my favorite scripture into evangelism. I'm not saying any one of yours are off by far. I'm just saying my favorite scripture, and actually my favorite model for evangelism, is Philippians chapter 2, where Jesus is leaving his glory in heaven and he becomes man. Okay. And let me draw on the table. So okay. This is Tom, okay? And he lives here down the street. Actually, no, he doesn't live. This is just Tom, and he's a stick figure, sorry. And he just lives on this board, okay? He just lives on this board, which means that he only has a two-dimensional world. Okay, he has up and down and left and right. That's all there is. Now, if we want to communicate with him in the 3D world that we live in and explain to him how our world works, that's very difficult for him to understand because he can't comprehend the 3 dimensions that we live in, right? It's almost impossible. So if we want to give him a very, very important message, here's what we do. We enter into his world at his level. we become a stick figure, right? Just like him. So we can talk to him at his level, and he can talk to us. Just like this. And notice, I don't want to talk like this. I want to talk like this. I want to enter into his world and meet him right where he is at. You follow?
Yeah.
This is what Jesus did. He became a man to share with us the greatest message of all times, who God is. Right? And he did that by becoming one of us to talk with us at our level, just like this. I find this is to be the greatest model of communication and evangelism I've ever seen. And when I think about evangelism, this is the first thing I think about. So if I'm meeting a new person, I try to enter into their world at their level. I try to understand, what are they thinking about? What questions are they asking? What language do they want to talk and use? What words helps them understand what I'm trying to say? And on the list goes. Does this make sense? Do you follow what we're trying to do with this? So, evangelism is a loving service. It is loving on people. It is respecting people. And it is giving people a precious, precious gift. An opportunity to hear the gospel. Right? We cannot always control what they do with it, but we give them the opportunity. And they have a God-given freedom and authority to decide for themselves what they do. But we do our very best to enter into their world and communicate in a way that they can understand and relate to. And that's loving on them and giving them something that is precious. So I find this fascinating. There's a lot of miscommunication going on in the world today, right? And there are ways that can help us do this, right? Especially the way of asking questions, like I was mentioning earlier, but also just to be normal and just talk about our life in a normal, everyday life. That's this. All right. I think we're on the same track here. Let's see. Here we go. So here you find yourself in this precious city. You're a church with a rich gospel history. Since 1901, this church has been in this community and has stood and focused and been a light for the gospel. And you want to continue in that. You want to continue that mission. So let's just talk about if this is the goal, to get people to the cross. Let's just draw a cross here. And here is where people are at right now in your community. And we shared a few stories earlier about things that have worked and things that maybe haven't worked so well. What are some of the roadblocks that you have found or think are present on the journey between here and here? And these can be roadblocks at least in two categories. So it can be roadblocks and let's just do this. There can be roadblocks with the people. Let's do this. People and church. So as we think about roadblocks, religiousness, that's because some of the roadblocks are in the people, objections that are inside of them somehow. But all the roadblocks can actually be in us, the church. Stuff that hinders us to be participants and facilitators of this process. Does that make sense? Okay. So you said what? Religiousness. Is that in the people or the church? Okay. Religiousness. I should almost get someone to write here for me because I'm not a good writer. But any other suggestions? What are some roadblocks that you see or have dealt with?
Massacre. Massacre in the world, like war and stuff.
War.
Don't understand.
War and evil things. Okay. Let me just say problem of evil. And that is a roadblock in the people. Okay, you were saying something? Ah, yeah. Bad church experiences. Thank you. Anyone else?
Church attitude.
Excuse me?
Church attitude.
Church attitude. So you say bad attitude here.
Yeah, we don't want those type of people in our church.
We don't want this kind of people in our church. They could damage the chairs. They could color the carpet. And they could even pollute us with this bad world out there. We definitely don't want that. Thank you for protecting us. We need protection. I would draw more exclamation marks if I had room. Sorry, I think I cut someone off. Who was, yeah.
Yeah, a fear of being vulnerable and giving up something, like giving up their life, thinking he's going to take over.
Fear of surrender.
Yeah.
Thank you. What's your name?
Jill.
Jill. Thank you, Jill. Fear of surrender. And that kind of sometimes happens to us also, because the Christian walk, it really is a journey of letting go of more. And as we surrender more, God has more room to work in our life. But good point. Anyone else?
I think people's perception of what you've got to do or what you are as a Christian. Doing something that people don't.
Yeah. So perception. So people maybe think that being a Christian and going to church is something like this, when in reality it's something different. Good. What's your name? Linda. Thank you, Linda. All right. This is good. You guys are great. Anyone else? Pam?
You organise events for people to invite people, and nobody seems to have any non-Christian friends, and they don't get invited to outreach events.
Okay, so you plan an event that is seeker-friendly, and then the church people don't invite anyone. Okay. So, yeah, lack of invitation, can you say that? Okay.
Certainly in some countries, communist or Muslim, the fear of
Persecution.
convert.
Right. So, yeah, pressure or persecution. Kind of maybe like I was mentioning, a mild type of pressure is the group pressure in Iceland that you don't want to go into the building. Thank you.
I would put on the church side isolation. The church isolates itself from.
Yeah, so is that maybe the protection thing that we were talking about earlier? Yeah, we just want to stay in our own group. I'm going to attach isolation to that. We don't want to change. We can maybe, if we talk for a long, maybe we can change the color of the carpet or the floor. but only my color, not your color. Yeah.
One of the church is lack of acceptance. Like we may not for protection sense, but if somebody's got like let's say homosexuality, we might not let them come to church. That or not saying we do that, but
Lack of embracing or acceptance. Thank you, Stephen.
Can I just say one thing?
Sylvia?
Go back to the needing protection situation.
Uh-huh.
We've had that in our church.
Okay. Okay.
We were down at Melbourne Street because this group of youth, punk rockers with the Mohican hairstyle arrived. And they sat on the windowsill and everybody went, oh! We've got one in now. Yeah, he's grown up. There's Glenn there now and he's a Christian.
So you're one of those? And since that's great. Since you're bringing it up, let me mention that in this text that I mentioned, and we were talking about this today in Acts 1:8, have you noticed that Jesus says, you're going to be my witness in Jerusalem, Judea, which is the region that Jerusalem is located in, and what does he say next? Samaria. And then he says the world. Now, what is Samaria? Is it the place the Jews liked going to? Did the Jews like meeting the people there? They would travel extra, not so they would not have to go there. And Jesus picking that out and kind of putting that, highlighting that to the disciples seems to mean the people that you absolutely do not want to meet, that's where I want you to go. Does that make sense? In Iceland, I think the Samaria of the Christian church in Iceland is probably the gay and LGBTQ and the trans community. Those are the people that Christians in Iceland rather not want to meet. So I can ask you, what people in your neighborhood or your city do you definitely not want to meet if you're honest, or that's where you've been? You follow? Yeah. I'll just leave that with you, because Jesus seems to be pretty clear about this. Okay, we're almost out of space here. Maybe one or two more. Sorry?
You can make yourselves too busy.
Oh, too busy.
Too busy doing coffee and
Ah, but church is nice, Pam. I like having nice coffee. I like you, and we like being together, I don't want anyone to interfering with that, He might smell bad,
I was going to say, the time sometimes I've had it said that church is on is inconvenient when they're on time.
Oh, so we set our services at times that fit us, but may not fit so well those we want to reach. Okay. Yeah, okay. Church schedule, non-seeker friendly. Now, yeah. Okay, I think we're going to pause here. You guys are so good at this. You can get in a room together and you can do this on your own. You don't need my help, I think. You're really good at this. But maybe we can ask tonight, I don't think we can talk about all of these because this is some really good stuff. But maybe we can pick out something that my angle and I can kind of help you with a little bit. Okay, I think we can maybe take one or two before we break. I'm really enjoying doing this with you guys. You are really your head is put on right. I can see that. Okay, so maybe I'll get input from you guys. What would you like me to talk about of these things? If you can read my writing. I can, of course, pick something that I like talking about, but I want this to be helpful for you on your journey, you know. Okay, the problem of evil. Is that something that you want to talk about? Okay, I can definitely talk about that.
I mean, I suggested it, but I think it's good because obviously with world events at the moment, if people are like, well, how can God exist? If this happens, it gives us all really
Yeah.
insight in
Yeah.
helping.
Yeah. Yeah. So, first of all, to do a proper discussion of this would take us several days, which we're obviously not going to do. But let me just share a few things, and then we'll see how far we go. So first of all, remember when I was talking about the difference between being a witness and being an evangelist? I think for most of us, we can't be an expert in answering this question. This is usually the most challenging question that actually all religions, including Christianity, receives. Let me also mention, as we're talking about this question, that when you've done these conversations long enough, you start to realize that actually, when everything is said and done, there are not that many questions that people really ask. Different questions that people ask, when you look at them, they boil down to an underlying question. So it's like a tree or a branch. So you see all these questions here up in the branches, but when you trace them to the root, there may be 6, 7, 8 root questions that people are asking. Okay? So you heard when Stephen framed this question, he talked about the wars going on and the world is broken and bad things happening. And I rephrased the question and said, the problem of evil. I just went down to the root. Okay? Because this is one of the most common questions that you get. So I'm saying that to try to encourage you, if you want to go into this area, which I don't think you have to, but if you want to and you feel drawn to that, there may be 6 to 8 core questions that you can study up on, and then you covered most of the tree. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So, and vice versa. Why do good things happen to bad people, and why do bad things happen to good people? You know. Okay, so I think I'll start with this. If you could see my mind, you could see some smoke. I think I'll start with this. Okay. No evil so basically, here's what happens. When we use the word evil or bad things happening, we are assuming that good things ought to happen. Or we have some standard that we measure things at and say, okay, this, based on the standard, this is a bad thing. Okay? So for example, I told the story of Andres driving and he had an accident. That is a bad thing because the measuring stick is that we want to drive without hitting another car. That is a good thing. Okay. Now, we are here talking about morality. And the nature of morality is that, this pen has no morality. It depends on the agent if this pen writes good things or bad things. And agency points to personality. There's someone who decides how he's going to use the pen. You follow me so far? Yeah. Okay. So morality always has to be grounded in a person. Otherwise, morality doesn't work. It's pointless to say, you're a bad stone. Well, the stone is just sitting there. He doesn't think about anything. He can't think. It's just a rock. But if someone takes a stone and kills someone with him, like in Genesis, the one using the stone is responsible, and he is the moral agent in that story. Okay. So, when people are saying, how can a good God allow all this evil? They are actually, in a way, entering into a fallacy or a wrong type of thinking, because they are borrowing the idea that good and evil exist from a world where there is a God. And then they use that to make the case that there shouldn't be a God, or that God can't exist. Because the thing is, if you throw God out, then there is no evil. Actually, I should write it the other way around. If there is no God, then there is no evil. Let me give you an example. Let's say that tomorrow Andres is very, very hungry. He wants a big, big breakfast, and I'm out of money. Okay. So I take my gun, I go to the bank, I shoot 3 people, rob the bank, and I feed Andres. Okay. Now, Ski, he will come to me and say, hey, August, you can't do that. This is wrong. Who says? Who's going to say this is wrong? I don't believe in God. I believe in the survival of the fittest. I'm just stronger than these guys in the bank, so I do whatever I like to do. Who cares? Are you going to tell me what's right and wrong? I'm not going to listen to you. Are you guys going to, shout at me? I don't care. Are you going to have the biggest person with the most money decide what is right and wrong? Are you going to vote on it? How are you going to decide? You can't. Once you throw God out, it's all off for grabs. Does that make sense? So a person saying, how can you believe in a good God when there's so much evil? Well, you can't really use the word evil unless there is a God. God is a necessary being to have in your worldview if you really want to ground morality. Because God is a person that is beyond us. He is a super person. And the line between right and wrong is a straight line that goes straight up to God. Okay, this was a bit heavy, but I think I saw some nodding heads. That does not mean that if someone is dealing with a big problem, you give them this answer. If they are crying, you cry with them. You don't give them stuff like this unless they're ready for it, just as a side note, all right? You meet people, like we talked about, where they're at. You don't talk like this. So I'm going to share one more thing, and then I think we're going to pause on this question. We could be talking about this all night. The second thing about this question that I have found really helpful, and remind me, Duncan, I have a book in my case I'm going to give you that really does a good take on this. Let me see if I can remember this right. So with the problem of evil, it can also be very helpful to separate two things. One, you want to separate the solution. You want to solve the problem of evil so that it no longer is a problem. That's the first thing that you want to identify. And the second thing is you want to answer why. You want to explain why it is a problem and why it is. So you separate the practical solution and you ask the why. Did someone raise their hand? Oh, okay. Otherwise, just feel free to jump in. Does this make sense? And then I'm going to explain this a little bit more. So one is, I want a solution to my problem. So for example, let's say Lord willing, this will not happen. And let's say if I'm walking out here tonight, I fall and I break my leg. Okay. And it's really bad. And I'm really hurting. Really bad. Okay. So Ski, did I get that right? Okay. He comes to me and he says, you know, August, here's why this happened. You were not paying attention when you crossed. There's a little dark, but you were not paying attention. You flipped over the stone, and your shoes are really bad. That is why this happened. Will that help me with my pain? No. So he just answered the why question. Okay. Now Duncan comes along, and he actually has training in first aid. So he comes along, he gets me some painkillers, you know, and he kind of positions me. He calls the ambulance, you know, and they get me fixed up. They fix the problem, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So with the problem of evil, what I found very helpful with this is that in Christianity, we are really strong here, actually. We are actually really strong. And there are actually two parts to that. There is the immediate, and there is the permanent. So with the immediate, I mean, right now, we are doing something about the problems in this world. We are feeding the hungry. We are meeting children with needs. We are sharing hope, etc. So we are trying to find the person that is broken and do something about it, right? But we also have a permanent, eternal solution we are looking towards, where Jesus comes back and he will remove all evil from this world. And in fact, that is God's grand plan to bring everything onto the lordship and the head of Jesus Christ, as it says in Ephesians. So God's grand plan is to actually remove all evil and all brokenness from this world. And we preach that and we share that, and that brings people hope. Because that is what we would expect of a good God. That he puts boundary and eventually eradicates. Do you use that word? Okay. English is my second language, so sometimes I mess up words. He will eventually remove all evil from this world. With the why, that is some of the stuff I shared with you earlier about you can't really use the word evil and good unless there is a God in your world. For the atheist, he struggles with that. In fact, that's one manifestation of atheism, that it's almost impossible to be a completely consistent atheist. Because, Andres, come here. Take your phone with you. Take your phone with you. Now, I'm a stronger one. Andres is an old guy, so I'm just going to take his phone and run with it. Andres is an atheist. No. Play your role. Play your role. Okay, stand here. Okay, let's do this again. You're just going to stand here. Andres is an atheist. Okay, remember, he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. Atheist has a strong position there is no God. He isn't thinking about it. He's not a skeptic. He's decided definitely there is no God. So I take his phone and I run away. What is he going to say? What is he going to say?
Give me my phone back.
Yeah, why? Why? Yeah, he's going to say, hey, this is wrong. Give me my phone back, right?
Thank you.
Thank you, have a seat. So the atheist, he is going to refer to a what? A moral standard. When someone takes his phone, he's going to default on that. Hey, this is wrong. Well, who cares? I'm just stronger than you. Who are you going to refer to? Do you follow? So try it sometime. No. No, don't try this at home. Okay, I think this is a good place to take a break. We could talk about this a lot more, but was this a little bit helpful? Yeah. Okay, good. You want some more? Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. It was getting warm in here, or maybe I was just warming up. Maybe before I get started again, my testimony is there on the table. So, please take a few, give them away. I just wanted to bring something that I could give out to people. So it has a prayer in the back, and it tells a little bit of my story, and maybe helps you explain why I think, like I think. I'm a soft. Sometimes people tell me I think in 1 and 0, so either or, but and then on Saturday, I believe it's at 6 p.m. I will be with Phil and his church in Preston.
City Church, Preston.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants directions,
Yeah. So we will be doing some of this, but hopefully, especially if some of you guys show up, we'll try to talk about some new things. Okay, so we wrote a lot here. Is there another topic that you're interested in diving into, or me talking into? While you think about that, originally I drew a stick figure here, and I asked the question, what are roadblocks from moving people from where they're at now to find and surrender to the cross of Jesus? Okay? And those are those roadblocks. And a lot of evangelism and apologetics is often about picking stones from the field, picking and helping people work through roadblocks on the journey to discover and find God. So those are some of those. We had roadblocks or stones in the harvest with the people, but we also identified some obstacles or roadblocks that we, the church, sometimes bring up. So just a little reminder of how we got here. So we talked about the problem of evil. Is there another topic you want to talk about? If not, I have lots of other things I'd like to. It's interesting. There is, yeah, yeah. There is an agenda. If we have time, I can maybe talk about my favorite triangle here that kind of may put this into a little perspective. But yeah. Thank you. Maybe just respond this way. We need to be respectful but bold. Yeah. And sometimes even only bold. But yeah. Anyone else? Anything else you want to talk about here? Otherwise, this can sit here. Several of these things are really topics that are best suited within your group to figure out. Is this something that is a problem for us? If not, if so, how can we change that? You know that even more than I, obviously. Yeah. All right, last call. If not, then we'll put this aside. You can take a picture of this and work with this. Okay. Okay. Let's do this. My default way to approach people, and Duncan asked, how do we get people from here to here? And my default way is to ask questions, and we talked about that a little bit already. Duncan has the God Test app, and I can also send you a PDF that is like a written format of that. That has a good set of questions. It's designed by my friend Dr. Rice Brooks. Those are questions like, do you believe in God? And if people say, no, I don't believe in God, then there are 9 questions that follow based on that answer. If they say, yes, I believe in God, there's a different set of 9 questions that follow. Those are questions like, if they say, I don't believe in God, I will ask, what are some of your main reasons why you don't believe in God? You see, I'm gathering data. I'm understanding how they think. Is this because there's no evidence for God, for example? Many years ago, I was talking to a young boy in a coffee house in Aberdeen. And I asked him, do you believe in God? And he said, nope. What are some of your main reasons? I really never heard any good evidence for the existence of God, he said. And that actually stopped me in my track, because all of a sudden, well, of course. If you never heard any good evidence, why would you believe? So I just said, well, thank you. Would you be interested in hearing some evidence for the existence of God? And he said, absolutely. And then we were off to the races. It was literally this simple. So asking questions can be really, really helpful. Okay, I think let me talk about the triangle a little bit, because it's a really interesting thing. So we Christians, we have a vision for a healthy society, a good society, where people are moral, they are free, and they get along because we're honoring God in all our interactions, right? Now, this is something I came across that really is the best model that I have found for a healthy society. Sorry, is this too small? Can you see this? Are you okay? Okay. So it has a triangle, and it has 3 things: freedom, religion or a system of ideas, and virtue. Okay. So freedom this is like a model for a good society, a good city, good country. Freedom is, you can look up in your constitution, it's the freedom of commerce, freedom to travel, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, etc. All those basic freedoms that I think most people agree are fundamental to have a good, healthy society. All right? Here is religion or worldview or a set of ideas. These are the big ideas that everyone has, that sit deep in our being, and we use them to answer questions like, where do I come from? Who am I? And where am I going? Make sense? We use them to answer questions about how to understand the world around us and who we are and put that into context. And one of the biggest questions here is that, is there a God or not? That will greatly influence how we answer these questions. And also, every single human being you have ever met or seen has these ideas. They may have never talked about them. They have never maybe identified what ideas they have, yet these big underlying ideas run their life. Make sense? Okay. And finally, we have virtue. Is that a word we use much today? Not so much. Maybe we should use it more. I say virtue, excuse me? Virtue signaling. Oh, okay. We are talking in the context of morality. Okay. Oh, I follow. Yeah, the virtue of this. Yeah, I follow. Yeah. So virtue means you do right when wrong is easier. Do you agree with that? Or you do right when nobody sees you. You're alone. So there's an inner motivation inside of you, even in situations where wrong is easier to do, you want to do what is right because you have virtue. Okay. So now we've talked a little bit about what each corner of the triangle means. And now comes the interesting part. Okay. There's a relationship between all of these. For example, let's say that virtue is on the downhill in our country. So people are stealing more, they're cheating more, they're breaking into cars, they're mean to one another. And if we run that country, we are going to, or that city, we're probably going to hire more policemen to protect the citizens from one another, right? Because things are getting more chaotic, and we want to enforce the law. And we might even set some new laws to keep people in check. And they might end up actually restricting our freedom. And that has impact. Do you follow? Now, religion, a healthy set of religion or system of ideas, relies on us being free to choose those ideas. For example, I must not, as an evangelist, go around banging people in the head with the Bible and say, you must believe. That doesn't work that way. God, in fact, designed a world where we, by design, are free to choose him or not. That's a requirement to have real love. Right. So it's actually built into the Christian faith that it is based on freely being able to choose God or not. So freedom is a necessity for healthy religion. And then finally, the role of religion or set of ideas is actually to build virtue in the city, in the country. For example, if I commit murder, they will throw me in jail in Iceland. And I may, have a sentence to 15 years, and maybe I'll stay there for 10 or 12. And then I'm let out of the jail, and I have served my sentence according to the law. Okay? But has my heart changed? Maybe, maybe not. And sadly, often not. So what do we have in our society that builds virtue? Classically, it has been the Christian faith that has done that, right? So if virtue is going downhill in our nation, we can ask, why is that happening? Is that because we are basing our society on the wrong ideas, or that the right ideas simply haven't got the foothold that they need to have, right? And maybe our boldness or our freedom to advocate for the right ideas has been capped to some extent, and that means that they are not being followed, or people are not joining those ideas, and then it becomes a vicious circle downhill. Because the less good ideas we have, the less virtue we have, and then less freedom we have, and we're going downhill. You follow? And then we can also see examples in history, like in the US, where between 1720 and 1780, they had what we can call the First Great Awakening. Before that happened, as they were taking more land, those rebels in the West, they had chaos. They were shooting one another. They were, not attentive to their farms or their marriages or their families. And then preachers like George Whitefield started to preach, and people in the thousands, in the hundreds of thousands, came to faith. They started attending to their families, farming their farms, and virtue went up. And then actually came the Second Great Awakening that also enforced and built virtue. And they're still living off the aftermath of this, although it's being more fractured today. Does that make sense to you? Okay. I'm sharing all of this just to help you understand what we're doing big picture as Christians. And here's where evangelism comes in. Evangelism meets the person and says, what do you believe about this world that we live in? What are your big ideas? And it invites people to change that set of ideas out and have new set of ideas, which we believe are true. We Christians believe that we are describing the reality we live in accurately. If Christianity is true, it will describe reality accurately as opposed to anything else. That doesn't mean that all other religions are completely wrong. Just means that if Christianity and any other religion differ, we hold that Christianity is right while the others are wrong, but they may be right in some other areas. You follow? So I found this very helpful to put evangelism into perspective. And as I think about my nation, as virtue is going downhill, I see my work as an evangelist long-term an attempt to change the future of my nation. Right. Now it is, as we talk with people who are skeptics and atheists, for the most part, it's pointless to talk to them about moral questions, because if they don't believe in God, like we talked about earlier, they don't really care if it's right or wrong, or they don't have a moral basis for that. You can't hold people accountable to morality that is built in God if they don't believe in God in the first place. What I mean by that is that if people or unbelievers start to ask me questions about, what do you think about, abortion or some other hot moral questions, I try to bring the question or the conversation on talking about if God exists or not. Because that is usually much more fruitful than debating some surface level questions. You try to go down to the core and ask and talk about, does God exist or not? That's where you have more hope to get them going. Because if they don't believe there's a God, it's harder for them to believe that Jesus exists, although, some people may start with Jesus. But you follow what I'm saying, So you try to bring the conversation to that. And you can do that by just asking a question like, well, do you believe there's a God? And if they say no, well, then you can ask, well, what is the main evidence for that? Or why do you not believe in God? Right? Or what are your reasons? If you want to kind of tread into the area of operating as an evangelist, But otherwise, you just talk about what you did over the weekend and if you went to church, etc. And you're a witness. Okay, does this help at all? Give insight, give context, give big picture. So, yeah. Okay, I see this beautiful lady, Alison, is in the house. And one of the things we could do, just to give you a snapshot, is we could ask this dear lady to come and play the typical atheist or skeptic in your city. And I can role play the evangelist that is talking to her. Would you like that? Okay, let's do it. Do you want to hand her a mic?
I'm very angry, August, because I've just sat in the doctor's for an hour.
All right. So the doctor did prep us up and did us a favor.
Waiting to see the doctor. Over an hour, in fact.
Okay. So Alison, what you're going to tell them, for this to be helpful, I think it's good for you to represent some common roadblocks that you enter or encounter in your city and play a person that you want to reach, but is resisting that with some roadblocks, right? So you can help her if you want to, but otherwise you could just tell them, who are you playing? What kind of person? Because that helps, they're not playing catch up as we start.
Okay. I'm going to be
You're what, sorry?
I'm going to be a teenage girl who is very popular in school. All her friends love her. All the boys like her. I always wanted to be like this girl. Never was. Doesn't want for anything.
How old are you?
15.
Okay. All right. Ready?
Ready.
Hi, nice to meet you.
All right.
What's your name?
Alison.
Excuse me?
Alison.
You're Alison. All right. Would you mind if I ask you a couple of questions?
Okay.
All right. So, are you studying or are you working or both?
Studying. When I
Studying?
feel like it.
You don't feel like it? What?
Well,
All
you know.
right. Okay. Why do you do it then?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, I have to.
Okay. But you don't like it?
Well, can't be bothered most of the time.
All right. I see. Do you believe in God?
Sort of.
Sort of. Okay. Can you describe God for me?
Nah.
So he doesn't have any attributes, really?
Well, he just tells you what to do, really, doesn't he?
Okay. Okay. But you're not sure if he does exist or not?
Well, not to me, but people tells me he does. But I don't know whether he does or not. I just know what people tell me.
Okay. Would you like to know if he exists or not?
I'm not that bothered. Won't make any difference to me, will it? Everything's all right with me.
So you're all right. Then
I'm fine. I'm sorted.
You're salted?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Curious. I'm just curious. If do you think life ends just when you're dead, or do you think there's eternity in life?
I don't think about death. I'm 15. Why would I think about being dead? I'm 15. I've got loads to do yet.
Well, I'm older than you, so I'm thinking about that. So I ask about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
So you don't care if there's a God or not, really?
It's not that I don't care. It's just a bit irrelevant to me, really, isn't it? I mean, I've got my mates. I'm happy.
You're happy?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Do you want some candy?
Why are you offering?
Yeah. Here, have some candy.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
I couldn't get anywhere with her, really. And that's actually a very, very good point. Remember the story where the Pharisees asked Jesus, with what authority do you do what you're doing? Do you remember that story? Okay. And Jesus answers by saying, well, I'll tell you, I'll answer you if you answer me this question. Do you remember what question he asked the Pharisees? He asked them, with what authority did John the Baptist do what he did? Okay. So the Pharisees go into the corner and say, okay, if we say John the Baptist was from God, the people, they will ask us, why didn't we follow him? And they will be angry. And if we say he wasn't from God, the people will be furious because everyone knows he was from God. So they come back to Jesus and say, we don't know, right? And then Jesus says, well, then I'm not going to tell you. So there's a couple of things we can learn from the story. One, the Pharisees were not interested in having an honest conversation, right? They were not interested in speaking truth. They were more interested in how they looked in the eyes of the people and how they could kind of get out of the situation, right? So Jesus said, if you're not willing to have an honest conversation with me, I can't, you know. They were kind of throwing off smoke. And besides, if they did not respect the authority of John the Baptist, which they probably knew was from God, they would surely not respect Jesus. So it was pointless to tell them that he was from God. Make sense? So I couldn't find, maybe on a good day with with some coffee in my body or something, I could have found an angle, but I honestly couldn't find an angle to really find something to work with in that conversation. So then I just buy the person a cup of coffee. I say, have a great day, and I move on. Some people, so this is very important. You can have a seat. We may do this again. So remember, we wanted to get from here to there, and that there's a process involved. The average person maybe needs to have 7 to 10 or more positive encounters about Christianity before they cross the line. And what we're really doing is, if everyone does something and does their part, we collaborate in moving that person closer. It very seldomly happens just in a spur of a moment like this. Usually there's a process involved. So sometimes we meet people that simply are far from being ripe or ready. They just need time in life before they are ready to really do any work with. Does that make sense? And we just tap them on the head, buy them coffee and a donut, and we move on. Make sense? So do we have time for more, or are we? Okay, you control the time. I could be here all night. Does Alison want? Are you off for doing another one? Do you want to do another? Excuse me.
You want another one?
Well, do you guys want another one? Okay, let's do another one.
Right, who do you want? You give me a character.
No, I was just going to say, could you not brought the conversation round to, if the person's a local person, there may be something in the news or an event.
Yep.
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 I mean, it's like, if I'd said to you, when I've walked around town, I've seen all these blue ribbons, what are they for? What would you have said?
Yeah, well, I would have said about Jay. I would have known about Jay, yeah.
So you would know about Jay, and I could say, right, Jay was 90,
Mm.
died in an accident.
Mm.
I know you say you picked blue ribbon. So did Jay.
Mm.
So wouldn't you think Jay's gone?
That's not fair on August because he doesn't know about Jay.
No, that's great. It's a great point.
But that
Yeah.
may be a thing there.
Yeah.
Because I think anybody would, no matter what age they are, would know somebody, friends or family or something who's died, grandparents.
Right. Right.
Really well. So, where do you think they're going after?
Right.
After the bodies have gone and that sort of thing. And I know it could lead into a morbid conversation.
Yeah.
We were very open anyway to talk about anything and this, that, and the other. So.
It actually helps, and actually let's go back to the old character. I had an idea, okay?
Okay.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
So, do you think there should be consequences for bad actions?
Yeah.
So, if someone is committing a murder or stealing, they should be put in jail?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, okay.
yeah.
So, what's your definition, or how do you decide what is good and what is bad?
I don't have to decide that. The police decide that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So let's say there is a global police that looks at everything that we do,
Mm?
and if we do something wrong, it has consequences.
A global police.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sees everything that you do.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you ever stolen? Okay. Have you ever told a lie?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I've told a lie. I'll save you out here.
Yeah,
I've told a
yeah,
lie.
yeah.
I've stolen. Okay.
Yeah.
So that means I've broken the global law.
Yeah, but that's done in little things. That's not like
Okay.
burgling somebody's house, is it? It's not like killing somebody.
Okay. Do you think are you able to calculate all the consequences that lying has over 15 years? Do you think you can comprehend all the consequences of that? No, I can't neither, because it can have serious consequences down the road, right?
Oh, I guess so.
Yeah. So let me help you out here. There is a global police. There's a moral law that is absolutely global and applies to all of us, and all of us have fallen short to fulfill that law. Can you jump? How high can you jump?
Not very.
No, okay. You're younger than me, and you can probably jump higher than me. But if we were competing to jump to the moon, it doesn't matter,
No.
even if you can jump maybe an inch higher than I.
Mhm.
And that's with this moral law. We've all fallen short. We could as well be competing to jump to the moon. So we have a problem. We have a serious problem because the consequences are serious. So I'm going to stop here. That might be an ankle if she responds to it. This was a bit tough, right? Because I'm giving her the law.
You should have primed me.
But and obviously if she responds to it, great. And if you see that she's not going to respond to it, you read the signs and you just, all right, and you move on. You learn to read how people react. If they kind of turn away from you and don't want to talk to you, you don't force it. Remember, freedom is a requirement. So it's like this. You knock on a door by asking a question or making a comment. If people open the door, you walk in and you knock on the next door. You see? But if they don't open the door, you do not kick it open. You thank them, you bless them, and you walk away. Make sense? Because evangelism is a loving service. We're loving on people. We're respecting people. We can never separate how we do evangelism from the content of evangelism. In other words, the content is Jesus. That's the essence of what we're bringing forward. So the method has always to reflect who he is. Right? We can never do a method that doesn't honor him. Right? I think that's a good end. Yeah, one. Yeah, we can make two questions.
With the young girl,
Mm-hmm.
person who wasn't
Yeah.
responsive,
Yeah.
would you not go away and think, how can I reach those
Absolutely.
kind of people
Yeah.
and adapt, or maybe
Yes.
think about how
Yes.
you could approach them? As
Yes.
Ski was saying, you don't know the area, but would it be that we, evangelists, thought of something that we could actually
Yeah.
try to do?
You grow as you go. That's how it works. I write sometimes notes. I didn't do that really well. I talked too much. I didn't ask good questions. Here's what I need to do next time. I write that down. I think about it, just like you did. Spot on. One more question.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
in education, we do a thing called plan, do, review.
Yeah.
So you plan something, you do it, work out how it went. If it went well, continue with that. If it didn't,
It's the same. It's the same. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And Duncan, I know that you know the SALT approach, right? We didn't talk about that tonight, but that goes into what you're saying. You can maybe pick that up at some point to talk about starting a conversation, asking questions, listening, and telling the story. That's part of the God Test app. You're absolutely right. Okay, one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. If anybody has. If not, we are done. Thank you, guys. It was a lot of fun to work with you. You're a great bunch. So.